What kind of prepper are you? I bet I know. Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Little drive and talk here about preparedness. Hopefully I haven't ran you off. If this isn't the kind of thing you like, you know how to swipe. Anywho, so some months ago I did this graph up talking about like the different types of preparedness that are the known types of preparedness or preppers, and how they acted. And I came up with this graph that was kind of controversial. It was whether your survival score number. It was very similar to doomsday preppers, but it's not, because it's actually a little bit more conclusive based off of the type of prepper that you actually are. Now, one of the things I did was I went out and I actually found, I'm going to turn off here so I can read this to you real quick, and then we'll get onto the road so I don't get myself unalived. And so the things that I talked about was, so like the categories were doomsday prepper, homesteaders, community preppers, wilderness preppers, urban preppers, minimalist preppers, lone wolf preppers, and armchair preppers. So which one are you? We don't know yet. But I also went over survivability ratings. It's pretty detailed. I wish this printed out better. I could like hold it up, but basically things from water storage, water filtration, food storage, emergency or energy production, fuel storage, medical supplies, medical training, security, community, firearms proficiency, hunting, growing food, and then obviously a total score. Stick around to the end to find out who has the strongest survivability based off of the type of prepper that they are. So with that said, let's talk about the first kind. And the first kind, I'm going to drive out of here. I don't know if you can tell where I am based off of what's happening in the background, but you might figure it out pretty quickly. If you figure it out in the comments, or if you figure it out, put it in the comments. Haha. Anyhow, so the very first type of prepper that most people, that the general public associates preparedness with, is the doomsday prepper. Now with the doomsday prepper, they prioritize water storage and filtration systems, and they kind of like, so they can ensure their long-term survival. So maybe you should be like checklisting this out, because this is not going to be a short video, but it won't be so long that you got to throw up in your hat. Anywho, we're going to turn off right here, and things are falling over. Also, their focus is on building large food stockpiles, and these are going to be like foods that are diverse. They don't just want to be like, I'm going to eat, let's eat some beans and rice and see if we can survive. No, that's not how they do these things. And they also want to make sure that they have long-lasting options for all sorts of different scenarios. They're not just, I'm prepping for a meteorite to strike my neighborhood. No, they're not these people. Whether people stereotype them like that or not, that's really not who these people are. Other things that they do is they invest heavily in energy production and fuel storage as well, because, and if you excuse me if I'm a little distracted because I'm still in this little town right now, they want to maintain power during extended outages, so they actually pay a lot of attention to those kinds of things. These are like their major preps. Now they also emphasize, where are we at here? They also emphasize, I've got my notes down here. I'm trying to look down and up and at the thing at the same time. Sorry. I'm uber tasking. Somebody's be like, you're going to get someone killed. And I'll be like, no, I'm not. Thank you for bringing it to my attention though. I appreciate you. Okay, so they're going to emphasize high levels of security and have high levels of security measures as well. They're also going to develop a lot of proficiency with firearms and other types of weaponry, because that's going to kind of link into hunting skills and as a backup food source. These are not the type of prepper that is going to depend solely on the ability to hunt game in the wild, because if we've been paying attention, we all know that this is not a sustainable way of preparing for anything, to be honest with you. I'm going to woods, and we're going to survive on deer meat and rabbits and squirrels. We're going to get some nuts, yeah. You know, it's just not the way to be long-term sustainability in any scenario whatsoever. You're gonna die anyway. So they're not hyper focused on it, but they do see this as a way of adding to their preps, diversification, if you will. And they're also the kind of people that they're dedicated to efforts to grow food as a supplementary survival strategy. They know they can't live off of tomatoes and cucumbers, but they also know that those things can be added to their food to make their food better. They can plus up things. I'm trying to get my cruise control set right here. We're going to set right there at 50, even though it's at 55. It's an old country road that I picked. So with all that said, the doomsday prepper they're very stereotyped. They're very stereotyped. And the question is, are you one? Did you just take all that stuff and said, yeah, that's me? Maybe. We'll find out in a second. Okay. So the next one, it's like, well, that sounds like a homesteader. Well, you know, in many ways it is. A lot of these different, these classes or categories of preppers, they all kind of link into each other. Okay. So when we start to talk about homesteading or the homesteading prepper, also, and you may have also heard the term prepsteader. I think that's the dipping my toe into the homesteading thing from a doomsday prepper. With homesteading preppers, let me see here. We're gonna drive through this circle right here. We're gonna get on down the road. There we go. And it's so many circles, straightaways. Go. There we go. I'm gonna turn up here in a second. But with homesteaders in general, they maintain solid water storage and filtration systems, and they're to sustain their type of living. So water is always going to be the key in any preparedness event. But with homesteaders, they make sure that they have like multiple sources of water. Also, they excel in food storage and production, and they rely on homegrown food and preserves for their supplies. So they literally like preserve the majority of what they grow. They preserve the majority of like the livestock that they slaughter. They just don't like, hey, let's go kill a cow today and eat for a week, you know, because we're gonna have to go do that again soon enough. You know what I'm saying? They actually like preserve the food. They can it. They dehydrate it. They freeze dry it. They do all sorts of crazy stuff, but they preserve the majority of the food that they create on their homestead to give the homestead longevity, to give their food supplies longevity. They also utilize energy production that is renewable sources to support their daily needs. Sure, they have solar panels, sure they have generators, but they're not like, hey, I've got to run these 27 devices, because if you have ever been on a homestead or know anything about homesteading, you're basically working, man. Your day off. That's why they made Sundays. You know what I'm saying? And somehow Sundays after church end up being dad get to work days, honey-do days. That's what those days turn into, or special projects that you got to work on. You know, because you didn't have time to do it the rest of the week because you're working on the homestead. That's really what homesteading's about. Now they also keep a reliable fuel reserve for heating and cooking in off-grid conditions. Because, you know, the general idea behind homesteading is that you should be as self-sustainable as possible. That's the general rule of homesteading. Okay, so talking about that, we're already busting some nuts here. People are already like, well, crap, am I a homesteader? What's going on, Wilbur? You know, they're starting to wonder what's going on. And the bottom line is these things all kind of link to each other. Okay, so the next thing is going to be the community prepper. Now, the community prepper is a very, very different animal. And remember, I made these up based off information available on the interwebs. So it's not like I'm just making this crap up. It's all out there. It's all algorithmically applicable and available. So a community prepper generally will ensure that they have an adequate water storage, water filtration to support the group's needs. The generalized, when you think about a community prepper, think more of like, I'm kind of a hippie, but I know how to do a few things, right? They do stockpile food reserves just to sustain the community for short to medium time frames. You know what I'm saying? They're not like, hey, we need a year's worth of food for everybody in the community. You know, that's not who these people are. I should have turned back there. Damn it. Okay, they're also going to maintain a modest fuel stock for basically essential community operations, chainsaws, generators, things like that. They're really not going to be like, hey, let's set up all these solar panels. That's really not how they're going to do that. When you would think that they actually did do that, but not today. They also do are equipped with medical supplies, and they do encourage training and calling for group members to actually like learn to do specific things. Like, hey, everybody should know how to use a tourniquet, but we're gonna need to train 3 or 4 people in the group just to be like our EMTs. That advanced level stuff that they can dedicate time to learning. They also build strong security for the community through collective defensive strategies. And these could literally be anything. They could be like, hey, let's go protect the compound kind of thing, watchtowers, machine guns, all that stuff. Or in more reality, it's more like the community watch at the minimum. And believe it or not, they actually do promote firearms proficiency, but it's almost like they're more interested in safety than, you know, the ability to hit silhouette targets, if you know what I mean. And lastly, they also support growing food efforts, and this is going because they want to enhance the community's resilience. A lot of times this is a community garden that is focused on food and creating those food sources that could feed the community. And this is a far stretch from the next one. Now, the wilderness prepper is one of the weaker of the prepper classes. I almost feel like I'm creating like levels in a video game or something like that. But this person is one of the lower levels of preparedness, and although is highly skilled, is still the one that is in the category that won't survive as long in an shtf situation, for lack of better words. Now, with the wilderness prepper, they rely on basic water storage with a focus on filtration from natural water sources. They also keep minimal food storage, you know, supplementing with foraging or hunting skills. It's kind of like their life, I guess. And they do use energy production, but they do it very sparingly. And they favor natural methods like fire building, for lack of better words. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they're reading a book with a candle, something to that effect. They do carry essential medical supplies, relying on kind of like wilderness resources. They do kind of personalize their security, but it's just a short level of community security, kind of like, hey, I've got this property, Joe's got that property, and we kind of watch out for each other. Now, their plus is that they're excellent with firearms, they're excellent hunters, and they do thrive in the wild. And lastly, they do grow food minimally, but they focus more on wild edibles and their survival skills than anything else, which is the polar opposite of the next one, which would be the urban prepper. Now, urban preppers, they're a special animal all to themselves, and you might just be one. You know, they maintain moderate water storage suited for basically their limited space in the urban environment. They just can't store as much water as somebody who lives in more of a rural environment. It's just that simple. They do stockpile food, but it's for short-term survival gaps, given the amount of space that they have. You know, we're really thinking about the apartment dweller more than anything else. They just don't have a lot of space unless they dedicate like an entire room in their apartment for storage. They're just never going to get to the level of the other preppers that are on this list. Now, they do focus on portable types of energy, you know, like jackeries and such. Let me get out of this guy's way here. It's a big old truck on a tiny little road, and I got to make a turn. But this is mainly focused on little items within their apartment or a small home. They do keep minimal fuel reserves. Honestly, I don't know what the urban prepper would do with, you know, even 5 gallons of gasoline. I don't know where they would put it. Maybe they have their own little garage where they could stack a few things. Not exactly sure, but categorizing them as the ability to do that is very low in the charts. Now, they do emphasize community security due to the high population density that they normally live in. And they normally do develop some form of firearms training or personal defense, simply because it's necessary in the environment they live in. Bad guys are pretty much everywhere. So I got to turn here, shit. And any food that they do grow, they a lot of them try to do it, but any food that they do grow, it's minimal. They rely on community gardens more than anything else if they're trying to grow food, because there's just no place for it. They could grow it on their back windows. I know people that have dedicated rooms specifically for growing food, but in the end, they just can't grow enough to sustain themselves and have to rely on community gardens, which is kind of different for the next one. But the next one, the minimalist prepper, is still not the least survivable. So there's hope for people that are the urban preppers. So with the minimalist survival, hopefully you're not this one. With the minimalist survival, they kind of opt for minimal water storage. They kind of focus on like portable water filtration. Now, they do keep small food stockpiles, but they're kind of prioritized as like lightweight essential items. And they use basic energy production tools for occasional needs. It's not something they're actually focused on. These people may not even have a jackery. And they store very little fuel, if any, and they kind of more rely on efficiency and mobility than anything else. And when they do, they do carry very compact medical supplies, and I hate to say it, but basically have very basic level training. And they do maintain their firearms proficiency for self-defense. So there's that. That's a plus. But this is their situation is for growing food it's done very sparingly, and it's kind of emphasizing skill over stockpile, which is not a true like survivability thingamabob. You know what I'm saying? It's not really survival focused. So when we talk about the minimalist prepper, they opt for minimal water storage, and they're more focused on portable filtration than anything else. And when we start to talk about water, now they use basic energy production tools for the occasional needs. This is not something they're actually focused on. They do keep small food stocks, but they're more focused on prioritizing lightweight and essential items than anything else. These are not people that are going to try and thrive in a scenario, in an shtf scenario. They store very little fuel, and they kind of are focusing on or trying to rely on the efficiency of their vehicles, their equipment, so on and so forth. So less fuel because I can burn, I get 40 miles a gallon, that kind of mentality. They do carry compact medical supplies, but their training is very minimalistic. It's very just what they watched on YouTube and such. And they will maintain firearms for self-defense, but they're literally just like, okay, I know how to pull a trigger. What's so hard about that, mister? And sometimes they will grow food, but they grow it sparingly, and they kind of emphasize the skills over stockpiles, which is kind of funny because they're not really focused on developing skills. And that brings us to the very last category type of prepper that you could be. And hopefully you're not this person, because if you are and stuff happens, you're gonna have a bad day. That's the armchair prepper. Now the armchair prepper, he maintains basic water storage, as a starting point for preparedness. He's probably got 5-gallon jugs stuffed away someplace that he hasn't changed out in a year or so. They do have a modest stockpile of food reserves for theoretical scenarios, and they have explored energy production concepts without any heavy investment. So this is a person who doesn't own a Jackery. He might have a battery backup to charge his phone 1 to 5 times, that kind of thing. They keep minimal fuel, if any, for emergencies and emergencies only. They sometimes acquire basic medical training, but they're kind of like the guy who bought the trauma kit or a blowout kit and said, that's great, let's keep it in the plastic so it'll last forever, and they put it on a shelf. And if it doesn't get bad enough, they rely almost wholeheartedly on community security while applying very limited personal effort themselves. And oddly enough, they do possess basic firearm knowledge, but they never practice it. They just never practice it. They can name the parts on a firearm. And they do consider growing food, from time to time, but it's really not on their list of priorities. So the question is, what type of prepper are you? Put it in the comments. Once I get enough comments, I'll show you the scores, and we'll find out whether you'll survive or whether you'll thrive. Okay guys, there's gonna be some videos popping up over here signaling to you that this video is ending very shortly, but they're really good videos, so yeah, get over there, check those out too. Later.